Kenny said that he was in the basement, apparently of the World Trade Center, when the building just came down and the elevator blew up. There was lots of smoke. He says, I dragged the guy out. His skin was hanging off, and I dragged him out, and I helped him to the ambulance. For many other people, unfortunately, there was to be no help because both buildings collapsed upon them.
And recapping what we've told you, we have America under attack. A terrorist attack is what President Bush is calling it. Both World Trade Center towers have collapsed. The scene in New York is one of disbelief. The smoke is now obscuring the entire skyline of Manhattan. All federal buildings in New York and Washington, D.C. are closed. There have been attacks in Washington as well. We had a report of the Pentagon being struck by a plane. The fire is still burning there. There was a report of a car bomb outside the State Department that has since been shot down. We also have we had a report that there was a bomb at the Capitol building, but that has since been shot down as well. Most of the federal buildings in Washington have been evacuated. The Treasury Department, the Capitol, even the White House, where reporters hurriedly were herded out of the building as a plane was circling overhead.
It's unclear who is responsible for these attacks, and that will become clear in the weeks and months ahead. But clearly, this was a coordinated attack. It happened in rapid-fire fashion. One plane and then another into the World Trade Center in New York, and then a third plane into the Pentagon in Washington, and then a fourth plane crashing. We believe it may be connected. We don't verify that yet, but crashing in Pennsylvania. This all happened very quickly, and the reports came in just as quickly.
As we are boarding Air Force One, they have bomb squads out here checking all of our gear a second time.
It's Linda Douglas on Capitol Hill. We've just been told that the Capitol is being evacuated and that all reporters must follow the direction of the Capitol Police.
It's Monica off the FAA conference call. There are no planes taking off in the entire country. Planes are allowed to land. No planes are taking off in the entire country.
It's Martha Raddatz. They have now issued an evacuation order at the State Department. As a precaution, they're saying everyone should evacuate.
A montage of reports from ABC correspondents as the events unfolded here this morning, this attack.
And this awful day around the United States, 4 planes down, 2 into the World Trade Center, 3rd into the Pentagon, 1 in Pennsylvania, as you've heard. MacDill Air Force Base, a likely target if anything was going to happen in the Tampa Bay area. 970 WFLA's Alan Ryan is there and joining us live. Al?
And, of course, Don, the reason it would be a likely target would be the fact that the United States Central Command, headquarters of all military forces, American military forces in the Middle East, is headquartered here at MacDill Air Force Base, in addition to United States Special Operations Command, which oversees the deployment of special operations teams like the Navy SEALs and Green Berets worldwide. There is significant targets of significance here, if you will, in the eyes of would-be terrorists. Really a very peaceful day outside the base, a beautiful day. The only indication that anything is wrong is that there are 2 Tampa police cars with flashing lights on the grassy median right outside the main gate, adding, I suppose, a measure of security, and about 6 television satellite trucks right outside the gate. Of course, nobody is getting on base who doesn't have a good reason to be on base. And the level of security here is called ThreatCon Delta. What ThreatCon Delta means, that's the highest state of alert. It means a state of war is imminent. At MacDill Air Force Base, Alan Ryan, News Radio 970 WFLA.
Thank you. 970 WFLA's Alan Ryan live at MacDill Air Force Base. We have reporters at Tampa International Airport where things are expected to become a little clearer in a short time period regarding air traffic. It's all been suspended nationwide by the FAA. International flights coming to the U.S. being routed to Canada. Let us continue in-depth team coverage on News Radio 970 WFLA with ABC News.
92.1 WDDV.
With United Airlines Flight 93. It was a Boeing 757. It was en route from Newark to San Francisco. I do not know how many people were on board that plane. United is also saying now that they are concerned about a further flight that apparently is still missing. Flight 175, it is a Boeing 767. It was scheduled from Boston to Los Angeles. That flight apparently is still unaccounted for, according to officials from United. So at least we believe there's at least one more plane that may still be flying around, in U.S. airspace. Obviously, Peter, I've also learned that one of the planes that went into the World Trade Tower was tracked by the FAA. They knew, I don't know if they knew it was hijacked or if they just knew something was wrong. Obviously, it had deviated from its flight path. They were able to track it on radar, and they did track it to Lower Manhattan. That is the latest we know about the flight.
Lisa, this may seem an awfully dumb question, but given the fact that the airlines, the major airlines, operate in such an intensely coordinated way, at least with their own operation centers, how is United Flight 175, a 767 from Boston to Los Angeles, thought to be missing and unaccounted for?
Well, all United is saying is that they are, quote, concerned about that flight. What I believe is that probably that flight was hijacked as well. Where it is right now, I'm sure perhaps the FAA, the FBI, and those folks know where it is. We are not being told, but there may still be another plane flying out there that has not yet crashed or landed or whatever will happen to it. But that flight is apparently at least unaccounted for at this time as far as public release. I'm sure someone knows where that flight is.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much then. Lisa Stark in Seattle today. Thought she was in Washington, covers aviation for us. Barbara Starr, one of our principal reporters at the Pentagon, I think is on the line as well. Barbara? Barbara, do you hear me? Barbara Starr?
Yes, Peter, I'm standing outside the Pentagon. About 10 or 15 minutes ago, we saw 50 to 75 military personnel move onto the helipad. They are stretcher-bearer volunteers. They have been assembled to go in and recover any potentially dead or wounded. And we have talked to an eyewitness who was down on the helipad earlier this morning, where the fire is, of course, still ongoing. He reported seeing more than a dozen wounded personnel earlier this morning. We have seen ambulances carry people off. About an hour ago, we saw emergency medical personnel bringing out a woman and a small child in their arms. So the situation here remains quite unsettled.
Can you describe a little more generally what unsettled mean? Is it calm? Is there chaos?
We have had periods of what can only be described as chaos. About 15 minutes ago, security personnel came through again and told us to start running, to move back, that there was another aircraft moving up the Potomac River from the south at a high rate of speed. Well, that apparently did not occur, and we have now moved back to our original camera position. So the police are quite at a point of quite high tension here this morning, and any little ripple is having them move people back to stay away from the building. They are extremely concerned about another attack and a potential additional explosion. They are taking every precaution.
Understandable. Barbara, the portion of the building that was breached when the aircraft crashed into it, do you know what happens in that part of the building?
Well, we're looking at it right now. Fire trucks are still pouring water more than an hour or better after the explosion onto the flames. This has occurred where the helipad is, a helicopter pad with a small control tower where military helicopters, and including Air Force One helicopters, take off and land regularly. A very senior military official told us he heard an explosion on the 5th floor of the Pentagon, and he believes that that's where the impact was. But looking at the side of the building, you can see smoke and flames, and the building is singed, literally top to bottom. Water is continuing to be poured on the flames by fire companies.
Thank you, Barbara Starr, very much. We've just seen a helicopter flying over the center portion of the District of Columbia. Maybe we can get another glimpse at that. It's gone out of frame now. I am wondering now whether or not we are not possibly looking at the president returning to the White House. Claire Shipman, you've got a pretty decent vantage point over the White House. Is that possibly what we're looking at? Okay, Claire Shipman will get to us when she's got a very good vantage point over the White House. It does not by any means look like the traditional arrival of the President from Andrews Air Force Base in a Marine helicopter on the south lawn of the White House, and quite frankly, everybody on the roof, with a few remaining people on the roof of the building now. This is a permanent guard. I think we're all in the country familiar with the fact that this is a permanent military installation on the top of
You're listening to live coverage from ABC News, a terrorist attack on the United States. I'm Jim Hickey in New York, along with my colleague Karen Chase. To recap, once again, there have been at least 3 attacks on the U.S. this morning, 2 on the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, 1 at the Pentagon in Washington, all 3 attacked by airplanes. United Airlines says it still has one of its planes missing and unaccounted for. Whether that was one of the planes that's crashed into the World Trade Center is unclear. However, when the planes did fly directly into the Trade Center, eyewitness Tony Bristow says he was working on a nearby pier in Lower Manhattan when he just happened to look toward the Trade Center just before the first plane hit.
The first plane looked like it was circling around both buildings, and then all of a sudden it went in from the back and the front just exploded outwards. Big, huge flame. Then about 10 minutes later, a second plane came, and it did the same thing, but it just went into the first World Trade Center on a lower level.
And both Trade Center towers have now collapsed upon themselves, trapping, no doubt, thousands of people under tons and tons of rubble. We have a report of a large plane crash in central Pennsylvania, and the 4th plane still missing. Karen?
The Port Authority chairman here in New York, Jim, called this worse than Pearl Harbor, and some are comparing it to World War II attacks. Again, both Trade Center towers have been felled. A plane has flown into the Pentagon, and a rescue effort is underway at this hour. United Airlines has grounded all its planes worldwide. The FAA has grounded all air traffic here in the U.S. Canadian air traffic has also been halted, and Canadian officials are considering closing the border between U.S. and Canada. Some are angry, some are shocked. Some are still locked in a state of disbelief. More than one person has been overheard saying, "I can't believe what I'm seeing." And another chilling statement, a security official in Denver says, "I don't think there's any place in America right now that's not at risk."
Overseas in the Middle East, Palestinian President Yasser Arafat has sent his condolences to President Bush and to the American people. He calls this a horrible, horrible attack, condemns it. However, Palestinian gunmen at refugee camps in Lebanon fired their guns into the air to celebrate the news of these attacks. One man told Reuters in South Lebanon there was a bout of firing as soon as the television showed the attacks. One Palestinian gunman was quoted as saying, "America and Israel are one. This is the result of American policy." These were gunmen in southern Lebanon, but as we say, Yasser Arafat himself has condemned the attacks.
And one of our allies, British Prime Minister Tony Blair, has scheduled crisis talks with his top ministers in London today after the attacks in the U.S. Blair is rushing back to London from a trade union meeting in the southern English coastal town of Brighton. He summoned his defense, foreign affairs, and interior and other ministers for talks. The meeting is expected to start at around 5. Britain is one of the U.S.'s closest allies. And again, Canadian officials are also holding meetings to decide what, if any, precautions to take.
Once again, no one has claimed responsibility for these attacks, and we must be careful. There was a great deal of speculation after the Oklahoma City bombing that it was Mid-East related, that Arab terrorists were involved in that. When that turned out, of course, not to be true. Tim McVeigh was responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing, and he subsequently was tried, convicted, and executed. The attacks this morning, whomever may have conducted them, has affected not only the lives of thousands upon thousands of people, it has also affected the nation's economy. A number of Wall Street banks, financial institutions have shut down. U.S. securities markets have decided not to open. Several financial firms have offices in the World Trade Center. They include Morgan Stanley, the Credit Suisse Group from Switzerland, Germany's Commerzbank, and Deutsche Bank from Germany. And that means, of course, that this will affect a worldwide economy.
Don Richards in the 970 WFLA News Center, keeping you updated on the local impact of the terror attacks on the United States. As we've told you, Hillsborough Sheriff's deputies, the FBI, Mayor, Tampa Police, meeting to discuss the extent that these events could impact Tampa Bay. Katie Hughes with the Tampa Police Department says not time to panic, but she says this is an important area.
Due to the state of heightened, awareness and alert, they're going to be looking at all the possibilities of, could the city be a target? I mean, obviously we've had Washington, New York be targets right now. Those are large cities. We can't afford to rule out the possibility that there could be potentially another large city as a target. That is
Katie Hughes of the Tampa Police Department. As we have told you, the Tampa International Airport, because of the FAA directive, basically grounding all flights, is in essence closed. We should be hearing more about that shortly. Of course, St. Petersburg Clearwater International Airport has canceled all flights until further notice. If you're interested in ATA flight 425 from Indianapolis, scheduled to land at St. Pete Clearwater Airport, it's been diverted to Atlanta. No other planes destined for St. Pete Clearwater Airport were en route at the time. Manatee County schools, Hillsborough County schools, Pinellas schools are open and operating normally. Tampa Trib says it's got a special edition coming out. 970 WFLA's Alan Ryan at MacDill Air Force Base. Alan?
Don, the condition here of security at MacDill Air Force Base has changed from ThreatCon Delta to Force Protection Condition Delta. I would imagine that's similar, but security seems to have been heightened up here in just the last 15 or 20 minutes. In addition to the 2 Tampa police cars that were outside the main gate of MacDill, there are now 4 Tampa police cars. All the traffic coming into MacDill is being funneled into one lane, the lane closest to the guardhouse, and some cars are being searched. I can see the trunks of cars and the hoods of cars being raised. There are Tampa police officers and, of course, Air Force security police outside the main gate. Some are wearing body armor, some are not. And obviously the level of security here at the gate has gone up considerably. I'm looking at a red car now right at the main gate with its trunk up as police officers and Air Force police search that car. And so the situation still tense here at MacDill, and in fact a little bit tenser than it was when I talked to you about 15 minutes ago.
Okay, 970 WFLA's Alan Ryan. Stay with us, Alan, or if we lose you, call us back. 970 WFLA's Alan Ryan at MacDill Air Force Base. Let's resume live in-depth team coverage from ABC News on News Radio 970 WFLA.
The Dove, 92.1.
Campaigning for his education program. He's now back in Washington to handle this very obvious crisis. Secretary of State Powell is on his way back to the U.S. from Peru. And the First Lady, Laura Bush, was to make her policy debut before a Senate committee today. Instead, stopped, very grim face, sad face, talked to newsmen and tried to reassure parents around the world, around the country. She says parents need to reassure their children everywhere in our country that they are safe. No doubt children will be seeing and hearing these reports all day long in the weeks and months to come, and very frightening reports they are. She tried to speak in a soothing tone. She said, Mrs. Bush said, our hearts and prayers go out to the victims of this act of terrorism.
And Jim, again, the most high-profile attacks of the day have occurred on the Twin Trade Towers here in New York. Authorities had been trying to evacuate them when they both came tumbling down. About 50,000 people work at the Trade Center. We have no idea how many had been evacuated by the time the buildings came crumbling down.
Now, there are some reports that all told 4 commercial aircraft were hijacked today, at least 2 of them out of Boston, and we do know that 3 airplanes crashed into U.S. landmarks, the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and the Pentagon. Now, United Airlines is confirming that one of its passenger jets, that's Flight 93 from Newark to San Francisco, crashed near Pittsburgh this morning. United said the airplane was a Boeing 757. The airline said it had no other details of how many people were on board. United also says it's deeply concerned about another flight. That's flight number 175, which departed from Boston. The airline said it had no details on that flight, does not know where it is, could very possibly be one of the flights or one of the planes that crashed into one of those three areas.
Don Richards in the 970 WFLA News Center. The situation air traffic-wise, a little bit clearer now. 970 WFLA's Jay Howell at Tampa International Airport. Jay?
Don, we just sat down and talked with Ed Cooley. He's the Senior Director of Operations and Maintenance here at TIA. And he said right now, operations here are on hold for an indefinite amount of time. That's because at 9:50, the FAA passed down the order that all air traffic was to be grounded for the unannounced amount of time. Now, what they've done here at TIA is they've shut down all of the airside buildings. These are the gates that you go to and you wait to board your flight or you meet your loved ones who are coming in. They've shut those buildings down. They're moving everyone to the land side. They've even shut down the food service and other vendors in those buildings. As of right now, the passenger traffic here is very light. There's not a whole lot of people here, so they said they may not have to put into effect contingency plans to feed or put these people up for the night. Now, as of yet, they've made no coordination that they know of with MacDill Air Force Base. And Mr. Cooley there, the Senior Director of Operations and Maintenance, says, if you have questions regarding a loved one who was traveling today, you want to know where they are, by all means call that airline. Call the airline that your loved one will be flying on. At Tampa International Airport, Jay Howell, News Radio 970 WFLA.
So air travel very much a question mark and at the hands of the FAA. And, of course, as we mentioned earlier, St. Pete Clearwater International Airport has canceled all flights until further notice, as basically has every airline airport in the United States under FAA directive. Planes coming in from overseas are being diverted to Canada because of the terror attacks on the United States. Schools operating normally, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Manatee counties. Obviously, a lot of attention being given to the situation today, and parents might want to prepare as best they can to answer questions from their kids. Bob Ehrlich is with Verizon Telephone, and he is joining us now. Bob, how this phone company is affected by all of this? Bob Ehrlich, are you there?
It is being reported by our affiliate, WTAE Television, that there was a flight.
Well, apparently that is not Bob Ehrlich. We do have Bob now, I believe. Bob from Verizon. What's the phone situation?
Yeah, Don, as you might expect, we're experiencing unusually heavy call volume in the network, and we're asking people to avoid call disruptions. If they could just limit their calls to essential purposes only, we'd surely appreciate it.
How is this heavy traffic affecting service per se?
Well, service itself, the network is fine. There's nothing wrong with the network. It's just like anything where there's been a natural disaster or another tragedy, there are a lot of people making calls, maybe just to make sure that they've heard about it. Those people trying to call into the areas affected are obviously not getting through, and that's really because of heavy call volume.
So if people will limit it to the essentials and keep it short, things are pretty good. How about service to New York City? I imagine that's pretty much chaotic.
Well, Don, we did have a 40,000 line switch in the Trade Center. That, of course, is gone, but the network has the ability to heal itself. It has been rerouted, so the network is working in New York. But again, call volumes are simply making it impossible to reach anyone there at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. That is Bob Ehrlich with Verizon on the phone situation. Keep it short. 4 Disney parks in Orlando, we are told, are closed. Employees have been sent home. SeaWorld and Universal reportedly remaining open, if you are wondering about that. Obviously, Disney World, one of the favorite destinations for people around the world, and obviously a potential target on a horrible day like today. So that is basically the situation. We are still keeping an eye on what is going on. Tampa Police, Pinellas Sheriff's deputies saying the bridges are open. They're not being monitored. Roads in and out of the base at MacDill, as you can understand, are all under very strict security. Defensive Force 4 was the word that Al Ryan, Protective Force 4, I believe, or Delta, was the phrase that Alan Ryan used in getting the situation at MacDill Air Force Base. If you do not work there, if you don't belong there, you will not get there. We'll continue to keep you updated. Let's go back now for live, continuing in-depth team coverage from ABC News.
Actually, Don, right now, doveradio.com and the Dove 92.1 WDDV. We will resume coverage in just a moment.
Hi, this is Anthony Munoz for Provident Bank. When it comes to sound advice and relevant financial solutions, nobody knows more about winning than Provident Bank. And right now, there's another great way to win with Provident. Just stop by any Provident Bank and enter the Football Fantasy Sweepstakes. You could win a trip for two to New Orleans or other great gridiron prizes, like a luxury box party at the Bengals-Steelers game or $5,000, or a big screen TV and party. Enter to win today at any Provident Bank, online at providentbank.com, or call 1-888-246-9142. Provident Bank's Football Fantasy Sweepstakes. Winning is good.
Don't forget to register for the big party in New Orleans. No purchase necessary. Stop into any Provident Bank location to see official rules and register to win. Promotion ends November 30th, 2001. Must be 18 years of age or older. Employees and immediate family members of Provident Bank and its promotional agencies are not eligible. Void where prohibited. Provident Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Are you missing out?
For more than 50 years, Venice Little Theater has been Sarasota County's best-kept secret. A place where entertainment thrives, audiences are greeted with friendly faces, and the area's best volunteer performers work and play.
Have you been missing out?
Now, Venice Little Theater has been recognized in national festivals as one of the 11 best community theaters in the United States. We can't keep it a secret any longer.
Will you be missing out?
You can now guarantee your seat for every show at the area's best community theater. VLT Main Stage and Stage 2 season tickets are on sale now at prices so affordable that you also guarantee yourself the area's best entertainment value. From the madcap humor of Lend Me a Tenor to the spectacle of Florida's first production of the Broadway smash hit Jekyll and Hyde, VLT's Main Stage will delight.
Don't miss out.
Call Venice Little Theater today at 488-1115. Get your season tickets. Guarantee your place. Experience the best.
You can't miss out.
WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV. We now resume coverage of today's attacks on the U.S.
That's an area of the FAA. I don't know what their procedures are in going from zone to zone.
Joe, how concerned are you?
I'm very concerned. This is a tragic event. I'm very concerned about this.
Do you think this day would ever come?
No.
Yes, thank you very much. That's all the information we have right now, and I apologize there's not more information.
Just one question, Joe. Is there any kind of video monitoring system which records passengers as they proceed through the task force area?
I can't discuss any of the security things we have in place.
Find out what's happening over in Hyatt as of 1:30.
We should have more
Spokesman Joseph Lawless at Boston's Logan Airport briefing reporters on Boston's involvement in these tragic events this morning. At least two of the planes that we know of were hijacked from Boston. Karen, perhaps you could bring us up on that.
Actually, one of the planes that was hijacked from Boston is believed to be one of the planes that was flown into the World Trade Center tower, the first one that was hit, the first one to collapse. Both of them have gone down. Both the World Trade Center towers in New York City have crumbled to the ground, changing the landscape of Manhattan forever. Another plane has crashed into the Pentagon, which is still burning at this hour. Going back to the World Trade Center for a moment, we have a quote of an eyewitness who said, "I heard a boom. People were jumping off the building everywhere. They were just jumping. These buildings were 110 stories high before they were toppled." We have Chris Yates, an aviation expert at Jane's Transport Magazine, saying this is perhaps the most audacious terrorist attack that has ever taken place in the world. It takes a logistics operation from the terror group involved that is second to none. And he or she adds only a very small handful of terror groups is on that list. We have flights from the U.S. lockdown.
The lockdown continues. I guess we can say it's a lockdown. It's a shutdown. Manhattan is virtually shut down. Washington is virtually shut down. The tunnels and bridges leading in and out of Manhattan, at least to the west side, to New Jersey, across the Hudson River, are closed. The White House, the Capitol, the State Department, the Pentagon were all evacuated. And there's a bit of a lockdown around the country. Not a bit. There's a great lockdown because the FAA has ordered all airports shut down this morning, and all planes that were in flight were ordered to land at the nearest airport. And we just heard Joseph Lawless a moment ago briefing reporters, and he also said that things are shut down at Logan.
We've increased our security measures. We've shut down all the construction sites within Logan Airport, both airside and landside. and we have shut down all security checkpoints and removed all passengers who had been previously screened out into the non-secure part of the airport.
Here in New York, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani could not speculate on exactly how many lives had been lost. However, he would say a tremendous number of lives had been lost. There was a stampede of all avenues on the west side, Reuters reported, when two of the towers came crumbling down. Witnesses say people were hysterical, saying we're going to die. A huge cloud of smoke and dust came up the avenue, looking like it was going to engulf everyone.
As we said, both President Bush and Secretary of State Powell were out of Washington when this occurred. Both are heading back to the nation's capital. The president coming back from Florida, Secretary of State Powell coming back from Lima, Peru. He cut short his what would have been, or what was, his first official visit to South America to return home to deal with this crisis. But before leaving, he urged foreign ministers from the OAS, the Organization of American States, to quickly pass a democracy pact, an agreement, as a clear message against terrorism, and it was adopted unanimously before he left. And then Powell left the military airport in Lima to head back to Washington, saying that this is a terrible, terrible tragedy. A terrible tragedy has befallen his nation, but it is befallen, said Secretary Powell, to all those who believe in democracy.
And of course, this is affecting the entire nation, Jim. Coast to coast evacuations have been ordered at the UN in New York, the Sears Tower in Chicago, and of course, Seattle Space Needle is shut down for the day. There are also lockdowns at military bases, and of course, extra guards at our nuclear supplies and at our germ warfare sites across the country.
And we know that this is affecting people around the world. As we said a few moments ago, many of the foreign exchange banks and money lenders were in the World Trade Center. That's where their American headquarters were. Deutsche Bank, Swiss Credit, Bank Credit from Switzerland, and others. So we know this is having an impact on financial dealings around the world, and world leaders are reacting. The Prime Minister of Turkey says these attacks could affect the entire world. He said this was calling a crisis meeting of generals and diplomats and national security officials after these aircraft smashed into the World Trade Center, into the Pentagon. He says the U.S. is face to face with one of the greatest tragedies in its history, something that he says could affect the entire world. And he wished our friends in America, he says, a rapid recovery. You're listening to live coverage of this tragedy from ABC News.
WDDV, Venice, Sarasota,
Richards in the
Bradenton.
970 WFLA News Center as we continue our in-depth team coverage of what is going on and not going on within the Tampa Bay area. Security tight at MacDill. The airport's closed by order of the FAA. Hillsborough Sheriff's officers, FBI, Mayor Dick Recca, Tampa Police meeting to discuss the extent that the events could impact the Bay Area. Katie Hughes is a spokesperson for the Tampa Police Department.
Look at logistically, we have MacDill Air Force Base. We do have, other. It's a major commercial center. I don't think that we would want to rule anything out. I mean, at this point, everybody should just be taking the necessary precaution.
Again, that is Katie Hughes with the Tampa Police Department. There's the meeting underway, as we say, regarding precautions the Tampa Bay area might be taking. Tampa Police, Pinellas deputies say the bridges are not undergoing extra monitoring. Of course, there is tightened security at MacDill Air Force Base. Greg Tida with the Pinellas Sheriff's Office says it is prepared for this sort of thing.
We have experts in the field of disaster preparedness, and that would include along the lines of weapons of mass destruction, and I guess we could probably call that what happened at the World Trade Center weapons of mass destruction. But our experts are on conference calls with people all around the United States. We are certainly in touch with the judicial systems, the judges, the other police chiefs of the area. Everyone's in communication with one another, and the mutual aid will be there if necessary. But I think everyone at this point is just wait and see what happens.
That is Greg Tida with the Pinellas Sheriff's Office. The situation is normal in most places, i.e. schools are open in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Manatee counties. We have heard of no cancellations save for this one. St. Petersburg Junior College is closing at noon. No evening classes. At this point, they hope to reopen tomorrow. St. Petersburg Junior College closing at noon. No evening classes today, but schools everywhere are operating as per normal. We are told that Disney World has closed. The other attractions in Orlando, SeaWorld and Universal, are remaining open. We're joined now by 970 WFLA, Steve Hall.
Don, we're not going to have the Rush Limbaugh show today for obvious reasons because of the attack in New York. And as you know, Rush Limbaugh originates his broadcast from there. Because phone lines are tied up, satellite links are all used, there will be no Rush Limbaugh show today here on 970 WFLA. So we will continue, of course, with our in-depth wall-to-wall team coverage here of the tragedy.
All right, 970 WFLA's Steve Hall. St. Pete Junior College, again, closing at noon. No evening courses being offered there today. They are at ThreatCon Delta at MacDill Air Force Base, which anticipates basically a state of war imminent, trying to keep the people safe at MacDill, which is obviously home for Central Operations Command and Special Operations Command, CENTCOM, responsible for military actions in the Middle East and a good section of that part of the globe, and Special Operations Command involving the SEALs, Delta Force, etc., people who might want to respond to any sort of attack. Again, we are continuing in-depth team coverage on News Radio 970, WFLA Tampa Bay. Let's return to ABC News.
Pentagon, and of course it was evacuated after a plane staged a major hit on the side of one of the Pentagon's walls, caving in part of the roof, starting a fire, and as you said, still burning. We have other agencies that were evacuated, including the Justice Department, the State Department, the Treasury Department, the Defense Department, and the CIA in Langley, Virginia. One lawmaker said the congressional leadership had been hustled away to safety. The FAA, again, has ordered all planes on the ground. Many planes were ordered to land in Canada. Canada has also ordered its planes grounded and is considering closing the border between the U.S.
This attack, these events are shaking world leaders. The Spanish Prime Minister calls the attacks on U.S. landmarks, quote, a terrorist frenzy. And he said he would cut cut short his trip to the Baltic states. He also says a special committee has been formed in Madrid under the Deputy Prime Minister to look into what measures may have to be taken in Spain in light of events in the U.S. Of course, the U.S. has military presence, military bases in Spain.
The Port Authority chairman here in New York has called this attack worse than World War II, worse than Pearl Harbor. ABC's Richard Davies is standing by live in Lower Manhattan. Richard, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you I'm looking up at the sky, and one half of the sky is a beautiful blue September day. The other half just clouded with smoke. Billowing smoke coming up from the direction of the World Trade Center. I've spoken to a number of people who've been in that area, some of them utterly dazed by what they saw. One man told me that we will all remember this day, just the way we remembered where we were when Kennedy was assassinated. We'd remember this day here in New York. You probably hear sirens behind me. All the area around here is closed off. Emergency vehicles going by repeatedly. They include police cars, ambulances, and of course emergency vehicles in general, fire engines now, hours after this tragedy, still a great deal of activity. What the police are trying to do in this area is to get people out of here. All of these buildings are closed. We are at least 15 blocks away from the World Trade Center. I'm not able to get very much closer, and they keep trying to push us further north and further away from this. I've spoken to one emergency service personnel who said it is just amazing what the police and the firefighters are doing in there, what heroes they've been, Karen.
Richard, it's Jim Hickey here. Stay with us here for a moment. Lots of people were caught and trapped inside those twin towers of the Trade Center when they collapsed. Debbie Troy was in one of the buildings. She had to walk down half the height. Now, the height is 110 stories, but she got out before the buildings collapsed, and she's lucky she got out at all.
They were lying on the floors, coming down the stairs. A lot of people had asthma attacks while they were coming down. It was bad. It hit in one World Trade Center, it hit somewhere on the 67th floor. I was on the 56th.
And when the buildings collapsed, it created a great cloud of smoke and dust. Richard Davies there in Manhattan. Is the dust still covering the area that you're in, or is it shifted?
It isn't totally covering the area I'm in, although there is quite a lot of dust. However, speaking to a couple of emergency workers and other people who walked out of that area with dust, by the way, all over their clothes. I mean, you can tell who's been there by just looking at their business suits. They say that you can't see more than just a few inches ahead of you in the worst affected area. Yes, there's dust all over the place, clouds of dark smoke and dust. One of the things that's striking here, I was stuck in a subway train for an hour and a half under the streets of Manhattan. I thought that because all the streets were closed off, that maybe subway was my best hope. It didn't work out. But one of the things that was remarkable was just how calm everybody has been. And even right now, people are showing a great deal of just fortitude. They're calm in the face of this. Not just dazed, but they're calm and they're just collected. And many people, there are a lot of lines around the public phone boxes. In fact, I'm at one now and probably ought to get off fairly soon. People just assuring their relatives that they are indeed safe and well and that they're okay and weren't caught up in this.
ABC's Richard Davies reporting live from Lower Manhattan, where the landscape has been changed forever. Both twin trade towers have been felled by an apparent terrorist flying planes into the buildings. Japan has ordered its military to tighten security for the huge U.S. bases scattered across the country, and U.S. Marines are on maximum alert after the attack. Japan's prime minister called it an extremely cowardly attack and beyond what any words can describe. He also added, this sort of terrorism will never be forgiven, and we feel strong anger.
Now, we know that the World Trade Center is in the financial district of Manhattan, and this is going to affect markets and banking. How it will affect, we'll have to see. But the Federal Reserve, hoping to provide assurances that the nation's banking system will be protected, said today it stood ready to provide additional money to banks if needed. The Federal Reserve System is open and operating. The discount window is available to meet liquidity needs. That's what the Fed said in just a two-sentence statement today. The promise to supply additional money to the banking system was similar to the promise the Fed made on the morning after the stock market crash in October of 1987. And you'll recall the market plunged by more than 500 points in that one day of trading.
As you might imagine, the FAA has paralyzed air traffic, ordered all outbound flights grounded following the Twin Tower disaster. As one spokesman put it, anybody that's planning on going somewhere isn't going anywhere, at least for now. Heightened security measures have also been put into effect at Chicago's O'Hare International. Passengers were asked to provide tickets and ID before they entered the metal detector area that leads to passenger gates. A Boeing 757, as we also mentioned, crashed in Pittsburgh. It was apparently the victim of a hijacking. A person in the lavatory with a cell phone alerted authorities. But again, the plane went down in western Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh. More than 100 people aboard. No survivors in that crash.
Now, given the devastation of these events, this probably was not necessary, but New York Mayor Giuliani ordered an evacuation of the lower part of Manhattan this morning. He said that a horrendous number of lives have been lost. And in a statement, the mayor said, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell everyone to remain calm and, to the extent they can, evacuate Lower Manhattan. The mayor says there has been an enormous loss of life and added there was no threat, no warning of the attack on the 110-story towers, in which about 50,000 people work. He said there were people jumping out of the World Trade Center. It was a horrible, horrible situation.
And as we mentioned earlier, some people are angry, some are shocked. Some people still can't believe that it's actually happening. There is smoke still, as we speak, in the skies over Manhattan, obscuring the now changed skyline. Both twin towers came tumbling down in terrorist attacks. President Bush has called it a national tragedy. He has called it a terrorist attack. Some are calling it worse than World War II. Washington hospitals, meanwhile, are on high alert and taking in a lot of people because a plane crashed into the wall of the Pentagon. All hospitals are either in emergency response mode or prepared to receive victims transported to them. All hospitals are on maximum alert in the Washington, D.C. area because of that airplane crash into the Pentagon. The Pentagon is still burning, and we see by video that part of one wall has collapsed. There is an organization comprised of 16 hospitals in Washington. They're trying to coordinate the emergency response.
As we just said, Mayor Giuliani is asking people to leave Lower Manhattan. Whether they can leave Manhattan is questionable because the bridges and tunnels are shut down, have been closed. But ABC's Bob Schmidt is out in the streets and gives us a sense of what is happening there this morning.
All of New York is evacuating, it seems, and people are wandering the streets here with shocked expressions on their faces. A lot of buildings, offices have let people out. There are long lines of people waiting for payphones. I'm talking on one right now, and there are lots of people behind me. Cell phones simply don't work here. There are people who are, some crying, some people are going into churches, a lot of people just trying to get home. The subways are shut down, the buses aren't running. General chaos here in New York and general shock over what has happened.
ABC's Bob Schmidt on a payphone, which is having difficulties getting a clear signal as well. Cell phones are not working. Bob says subways are shut down. ABC's Richard Davies told us it took him an hour and a half just to go a few blocks from Midtown to Lower Manhattan. So this is an unprecedented time in New York City.
Across the nation, voluntary precautions are underway. In California, the state is on high alert. The state's emergency council convened. Governor Gray Davis is requesting higher security at all state buildings. In Colorado, city and state officials stepped up security around government buildings there. They also opened an emergency preparedness office in the basement of City Hall. Florida, security heightened at federal courts. Walt Disney World has been evacuated and closed its parks and shopping and entertainment complex. In Georgia, all flights at Hartsfield Atlanta International Airport, the nation's busiest, stopped. The CNN Center, world headquarters of Cable News Network, has been closed to the public, although journalists and the AP are still inside. In Illinois, the Sears Tower has been shut down, the world's tallest building. State government buildings in Chicago and Springfield are closed. The National Guard is on a state of heightened alert in Illinois. In Kentucky, Southern Governors Association canceled the annual fall meeting, so governors of Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, and Mississippi could head back to their states and coordinate their own emergency responses. And in Maryland, officials are tightening security throughout the state. Security has been heightened at Andrews Air Force Base. That's where the president takes off when he flies Air Force One out of Washington. Baltimore Washington International Airport has actually been shut down. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport is shut down. And the tallest building in that state, the IDS Center in downtown Minneapolis, has been evacuated.
And smoke continues to billow over New York Harbor from the World Trade Center, from the rubble of the World Trade Center. And a moment ago, we could see flames billowing from some of the offices in the Pentagon. I'm Jim Hickey in New York with my colleague Karen Chase. This is continuing live coverage of this tragedy here in New York and Washington and Pennsylvania.
That President Bush may be at MacDill Air Force Base. We got to see him take off from Sarasota International Airport. Nobody has reported seeing Air Force One land there. However, it's only a very short flight across Tampa Bay from one airport to the Air Force Base. And there's a possibility that he is indeed there. Washington, D.C., apparently not the best place for the president on this day. USF has canceled classes. We are told that St. Pete Junior College has also been canceling classes as of noontime today. No evening classes. Hope to resume tomorrow. Let's see if we can get something more on the president.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton will continue with wall-to-wall coverage of the attack on the United States in just a moment.
South Trust Bank presents Spot Check.
Mom, ask Michelle to walk the dog. I'm playing. I'm on the phone, Mom. Why can't Dad walk the dog?
I can't walk the dog. I'm in my suit.
We just bought a Dalmatian puppy with the cutest spots. So now on top of my job, my kids, and my husband, I have dog responsibilities. My life is crazy right now.
Mom, he's really got to go outside.
Fortunately, the one part of my life that's completely under control is my financial life. We bank at South Trust with their Banker's Dozen checking account. It helps me get organized with 13 features all in one account. Terrific stuff, like no minimum monthly balance, unlimited check writing for one low flat monthly fee, and free standard checks. Thanks to South Trust and their Banker's Dozen account, we get 13 great features together in one account. And that keeps my financial life sane. Now, if you'll excuse me, we've got to go for a walk.
Banker's Dozen from South Trust. Call 1-800-CALL-STB. Member FDIC, subject to credit approval.
It's the fastest way around the web. Comcast at-home high-speed internet service, just $9.95 a month for 3 months. Up to 25 times faster than dial-up. Comcast at home, just $9.95 a month for 3 months. Real-time online gaming. Download MP3 files, video clips, movie trailers, graphic-heavy sites in seconds. Comcast at home, just $9.95 a month for 3 months. Includes 7 email addresses and 10 megabytes of personal web space. Comcast at Home, just $9.95 a month for 3 months. Call now and you'll also get a free professional installation and 25% off select internet items from Intel. Call 1-888-793-9800. That's 1-888-793-9800. Or visit www.comcast.com. Comcast at Home. It's all about fast. Actual speeds may vary. Limited time offer. Restrictions may apply. Service not available in all areas.
Hello, folks. This is Joe Namath. You and I both know the secret to scoring big is timing. Now is the time for you to join the over 5,000 smart investors on the Veston team. Get in the game and win. Here's Veston founder and CEO, Mr. Mike Schustek, to tell you more about the next seminar.
Thanks, Joe. Join me Tuesday, September 25th at 3 p.m. at the Radisson Lido Beach Hotel and learn about trust deed investments.
Investment in mortgage programs can involve significant risks. Consult with your tax and financial advisor before investing in any mortgage program. Neither the SEC nor any state securities commission has approved or disapproved of the units in the fund or passed upon the adequacy or accuracy of the prospectus. Seating for this seminar is on a limited basis, so please make plans to call soon for reservations and information.
Win with our team. Call Veston today, toll free, 1-888-2-EARN-12.
Now more than ever, you should visit the beautiful showroom of Nilsson Glass and Mirror at 1035 North Lime. You can discover for yourself how aware homeowners and interior decorators have provided added accent while making homes look and feel bigger and brighter. Great selection and a variety of choices let you craft creative reflective ideas for your home. Nilsson Glass and Mirror Company have been helping homeowners for over 45 years, and they stand ready to help you. For directions and phone consultations, call 366-3030 today and plan to visit Nilsson's idea-inspiring showroom at 1035 North Lime Avenue. You and your family can enjoy the benefits of having mirrors amplify the light and appearance of your home. Call for directions today. Nilsson Glass and Mirror Company. Call 366-3030 today.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV. This just in, Our Lady of Lourdes, 1301 Center Road, will be holding a prayer service this evening at 7 p.m.
WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton, now continues with wall-to-wall coverage of the attack on the United States.
They're trying to alleviate and use 911 only for bona fide life-threatening fire, police, and medical emergencies. The situation as far as long-distance calls is concerned, basically jammed, as you might imagine, with people trying to get to relatives and friends in New York City. Let's go to Tampa International Airport now. 970 WFLA's Sharon Parker is there. Sharon?
Well, it's pretty quiet here, as you can well imagine. Obviously, there are no flights leaving TIA, and there are no flights coming into TIA at this point. There are quite a few passengers that are stranded here. A lot of folks knew early on that this was going to be a situation here at the airport, and if they had a flight that was leaving, they assumed that it wasn't going to leave, and they didn't show up. But we do have some passengers here. I've talked to several of them. Everybody's taking this in stride. Obviously, there's nothing one can really do but just wait this out. And talked to one gentleman who was on his way from Fort Lauderdale to Houston, I believe. And his flight was diverted here to Tampa because it was the closest airport at the time of this incident. And the pilot had just told the passengers basically that they were going to make an emergency landing, but everything was okay with the plane. The passengers didn't know what had happened until they got off the plane, and many people are still gathered around a few of the TV sets that are on here in the airport. Some of the shops have even closed down. In fact, most of the shops have closed down at this point, so it's operational, but not. Obviously, no flights leaving, and there's a moderate line in front of one of the ticket agents here at the Continental Ticket Agent, people trying to make some sense out of any future flights that they might have to take out of here at TIA.
This is an entirely premature question. Is there any indication as to when things might get back to normal?
Well, there was a news conference with the members of the Aviation Authority here a short while ago, and the indication would be, of course, it's a tenuous situation, it's fluid, but it would be hours at the very least. It would be 7-8 hours at the very least before things would get back to normal, if then. So again, the Aviation Authority believes that a lot of folks who are going to pick up somebody, or obviously they didn't even bother coming here to the airport. You can tell that cab drivers are moderately busy. One gentleman was on his way from Chicago to Puerto Rico and came through Tampa unexpectedly, and was trying to book himself a hotel. But it's an unspeakable situation. People are glued to the TVs that are on in the few remaining restaurants, watching this thing continue to unfold. And that's about all they can do.
All right, thank you. That is 970 WFLA's Sharon Parker live at Tampa International Airport. More and more things are starting to close down because of the incidents of today, and we are told that several of the malls in the area are actually shutting down. We're joined by Jim Francovia, who's spokesperson for Brandon Citrus Park and Countryside. Sir, what's the situation?
The corporate office of Urban Retail Properties, which is based in Chicago, has decided that all shopping centers nationwide managed by the company will be closed today for the safety of customers and employees.
Any indication as to when they might reopen?
At this point, tomorrow morning at 10, these facilities will reopen.
All right, but that is Brandon, Citrus Park, and Countryside?
Correct.
All right, sir. Jim Francovia, who speaks for the company which manages the Brandon, Citrus Park, and Countryside mall shopping centers, which are closing and which plan to reopen at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Again, things that we know are closing include USF classes. St. Petersburg Junior College is closed at noon, no evening classes today. And the Janet Jackson concert has been postponed until tomorrow, same time, same ticket. So that is the situation from this particular point. Let's return to in-depth team coverage on News Radio 970 WFLA Tampa Bay from ABC News.
The most compassionate it can be for the people whose lives are still at risk. And we're mobilizing National Guard units from across the state. We're getting help from the surrounding states and coordinating with the city, and that's what we have to do at this point.
And Governor, what have you done about the other so-called high-profile potential targets in New York City, like the UN and the bridges and things like this? Are they all evacuated and locked down now?
UN's evacuated. The tunnels have been closed. The George Washington Bridge is open under security for emergency services coming in and people going out. We've shut down most of the mass transit. Grand Central is open under very tight security, but people who pass through the security have limited service to the northern suburbs, and we're doing the same thing on Long Island. But the important thing now is to provide as much help as quickly and as effectively to those whose lives are at risk or those who've been injured, and we're working with the city and federal officials to make sure that happens.
Do you believe that New York City is now under control?
New York City has been under attack, and until we get through this, we just have to continue to respond as strongly as we can.
And are you in a profile now? Are you in a position where you actually think there's a potential for more?
We just don't know. That's why we have to not only help those who have been injured, but also take every security step we can to try to prevent further incidents. We just don't know, Peter.
Okay. Governor Pataki, thank you very much. Governor George Pataki of New York, who is in New York City, which, of course, is where he probably belongs at a moment like this. Downtown Manhattan is saying simply that the National Guard has been called in, the tunnels are closed, the George Washington Bridge, which goes across the Hudson River from the west side of Manhattan into New Jersey. Just remember, many thousands of people from New Jersey work in New York, and there's tremendous commerce back and forth on a daily basis. That has all been brought to a help. It's interesting to recall, John Miller, that the attack on the trade towers in '93 was launched from New Jersey, or at least the operational headquarters of the people who attacked the Trade Center were in New Jersey.
Correct. And the building of the bomb and the original conspiracy was all carried out in towns right across the river. In fact, the conspirators later admitted that they watched from New Jersey to see if the buildings would in fact fall. And they didn't. This time they did.
They did today. And Governor Pataki trying, as politicians again must on occasions like this, trying to express the horror and the commitment that the political establishment feels to those people who have died and those people who need to be rescued. It's an answer to every question about whether or not something was locked down or something. He came back every time that their priority now is to try to help those people who are in deep and, in some cases, still desperate trouble. George,
you're listening to live coverage from ABC News. Live coverage of this devastating attack on the United States. I'm Jim Hickey, New York, along with my colleague Clarissa Douglas. Just to bring you up to date, smoke continues to billow from the rubble of the World Trade Center in New York City, and smoke and fire continue to pour forth from the Pentagon in Washington, all of them attacked by 2 or 3 airplanes earlier this morning.
Both towers of the World Trade Center collapsed. There were 2 American Airlines planes that went into the buildings. American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, 2 pilots. And then American Airlines Flight 77 from Washington Dulles to Los Angeles, 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, 2 pilots. A total of 156 passengers and crew killed in the 2 planes that went into the World Trade Center. Also, there was an American Airlines flight that crashed into a helicopter landing pad and into a section of the Pentagon. That building is evacuated. There's dark gray smoke billowing from a section of the Pentagon that collapsed, a 200-foot hole blown in the innermost ring of the Pentagon.
The FAA has ordered all airports controlled by the FAA across the country shut down today, ordered planes in flight to land at the nearest airport. The bridges and tunnels across the Hudson River leading from Manhattan to New Jersey are all closed today. The State Department, the Capitol, the White House, and the Pentagon have all been evacuated this morning as security officials, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, FBI, the Secret Service, everyone tries to get a handle on this horrific attack. No one has claimed responsibility yet. Some people are speculating that it could be terrorist groups in the Mideast, but no one, again, we repeat, no one has claimed responsibility. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News.
WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton.
New York, along with my colleague Clarissa Douglas, also here in New York. There is still, Clarissa, 1 plane unaccounted for.
That is United Flight 175, Boston to Los Angeles, 65 passengers and crew aboard. United won't say where or what happened to that plane, where it went down. Earlier, of course, United Airlines had Flight 93, a 757 from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. It crashed near Pittsburgh. Not clear if that crash was related to what happened in New York City and the Pentagon. Nobody is making any connections there. This, of course, is affecting the entire country. As Jim mentioned, the FAA has halted all flights at all airports. In Los Angeles and San Francisco, police are on tactical alert. In New Jersey, airports and river crossings to the city are closed.
And Mayor Giuliani has asked people to remain calm, but to evacuate Lower Manhattan. This is ABC News.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton will continue with wall-to-wall coverage of the attack on the United States in just a moment.
Sorry I'm late, Jane. I've been learning my LASIK basics.
LASIK basics? Is that anything like learning your ABCs?
Sort of. It's like learning the ABCs of laser surgery.
Oh, I've heard about that. But with so many choices and prices out there today, how do you know which one is the best and the safest?
Well, that's why the Eye Centers of Florida wants people to know their LASIK basics. For instance, a thorough preoperative screening is just as important as the surgery. They are also featuring OrbScan 2, a diagnostic tool. It meticulously maps your eye prior to surgery.
Wow, I had no idea.
Well, most people don't. Did you know one laser does not fit all? Eye Centers has an array of lasers to ensure you the best possible outcome. And of course, there's no substitute for skilled and experienced surgeons. Eye Center surgeons are frequently chosen by the FDA to conduct LASIK clinical studies.
I'm impressed, Mary. You really know your LASIK basics.
By knowing your LASIK basics, you can make an informed decision when it comes to your LASIK surgery. Call Eye Centers of Florida today for your complimentary, no-obligation, 1-hour consultation and free gift. Phone 1-888-EYECARE. LASIK surgery at Eye Centers of Florida, clearly the right choice.
Piano Distributors official grand opening, Monday through Saturday, September 10th through the 15th. Piano Distributors, the area's exclusive dealer for world-famous Yamaha piano products, proudly announces its official grand opening. Throughout the week of September 10th through the 15th, we'll feature activities for all music lovers, seminars, concerts, teachers, and even karaoke. The world's most advanced piano, the Yamaha Pro 2000 Disclavier. One of only 3 pianos like it in the world will highlight the week. There's something for everyone, so stop by and see why Piano Distributors will become your favorite piano store. Visit the Big Blue Canopy at 4441 South Tamiami Trail, September 10th through the 15th, and enter to win a Clavinova piano, valued at over $2,400. That's Piano Distributors, grand opening September 10th through the 15th, 4441 South Tamiami Trail. See you there.
Hey, Bob, how's it going?
I'll tell you, it could be a lot better. I just missed an important phone call from corporate because my cell phone coverage is the pits. I keep missing important messages. My battery goes dead after 2 calls. The reception is lousy. Every month my cell bill gets higher and
Sorry I asked, but there's a better way, you know.
How?
Arch Wireless. They have a 2-way messaging system called Webster 100. You can send and receive wireless emails to anywhere in the world. Get instant messaging, get mail from your PC while you're on the go without even dialing in. Plus, it also works like a pager.
You gotta be kidding me. All that, plus I can do it without my laptop?
Sure. Anything that goes onto your PC will also go onto your Arch Wireless 2-way.
Arch Wireless is going all out for August with a special promotional offer. Get $80 off the Webster 100. Monthly airtime for only $9.95, 2 weeks free, and a toll-free number. Call Arch Wireless today at 941-751-6455 or toll-free at 866-749-0843. Try Arch Wireless for 2 weeks free. Arch Wireless, the world's largest wireless messaging company.
If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with prostate cancer, you should know that the world leader in brachytherapy just got better. Announcing the grand opening of Dottoli Cancer Center and Brachytherapy Research Institute.
This is Dr. Michael Dottoli. Brachytherapy is an outpatient procedure that we have been doing with tremendous success for over 15 years. Brachytherapy involves the implantation of special seeds directly into the prostate and surrounding areas. It offers minimal discomfort and much faster recovery time when compared to radical prostate surgery.
Call toll-free 1-877-328-8654. That's 1-877-DOTTOLI. And find out why Dr. Dottoli and Associate Dr. Richard Serace continue to be the world leaders in brachytherapy.
With our new cancer center in Sarasota, we can offer our patients the highest level of treatment in a relaxed and personal environment. Up till now, not available anywhere on the west coast of Florida, or for that matter, the world.
Dottoli Cancer Center and Brachytherapy Research Institute. The world leader, now in Sarasota.
WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton.
The Dove 92.1 WDDV, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton, now continues with wall-to-wall coverage of the attack on the United States.
Authorities absolutely wrong. To be alert for such attacks, you've got to be in the enemy's camps. You've got to have agents that are operating to find out what happens so you can preempt it beforehand. We're building defense shields that cost $100 billion to stop a missile that probably will never come. When we're faced with this reality, when our FBI, who are our main defenders, who are the guys that stopped the attack in 2000 at Times Square and in Seattle, brilliantly, have been underfunded, not given the muscle to do the job. We've got to say, hey, defense shield, who needs it? Let's buck up the FBI and everybody else that's involved in anti-terrorism. We're at war. Let's prepare for it.
Colonel Hackworth, this is Clarissa Douglas. Many people might be asking, why today? Is there anything significant you see about today's date?
No. I've been, this has kind of been my specialty over the years, and I've been watching Osama bin Laden, and only 3 days ago he predicted in an email message that we're really due for a big surprise. And he's the guy that brought havoc onto the USS Cole, to our military installations in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, and he, in my view, is probably the guy whose fingerprints will be wrapped around this. If this is the case, then we got to quit pussyfooting around and throwing cruise missiles at him. We've got to go in to Afghanistan with cold steel, and that'll be at a high price of U.S. casualties, and take this rat out. We've got to dig him out of his cave and do unto him what we did to Adolf Hitler in 1945.
You're suggesting, then, that we attack Afghanistan?
I'm saying that what we need to do, if the Afghanistan government harbors this known criminal master terrorist who's financing this, and believe me, this was financed by a lot of money went down, a lot of effort went down to put something together as concerted as this was. It took a great deal of masterminding, and that's what Osama bin Laden has. So yes, if his fingerprint is found on the weapon, he's got to go.
Colonel Hackworth, the two American Airlines planes that crashed into the World Trade Center were commandeered. What does that say about airport security?
Well, if you go, one of them came out of Boston, and if you go through the security apparatus at Boston, nobody speaks English. And what we do is we hire people on minimum wages and put them in a security role, and bingo, this is the end result. These people probably got aboard through contacts through the security thing, or taking very sophisticated weaponry, pistols that are not made of metal, that made of plastic, but they're hard enough to be able to use as pistols. And it's my guess that they commandeered the plane, probably shot the pilot, because no pilot would drive the plane in. If he's going to die and he's got a gun pointed at his head, he's going to tell the terrorist to take him out. He'll never dive into the World Trade Center or the Pentagon because he's going to die anyway. So probably the terrorists were also well-trained aviators to be able to fly that aircraft into the buildings at which they struck.
Colonel, you might be interested to know that Nebraska Senator Chuck Hagel, who is a Vietnam War veteran,
he was in my outfit.
Well, he used your words today, too. He calls this attack today a second Pearl Harbor.
Well, that's the fact of life, and I hope that the American government will now wake up, and I hope the people will say, why the missile shield? Why don't we have a strong FBI with enough resources to stop this kind of stuff? Because we're going to see more.
Who else besides Osama bin Laden, Colonel Hackworth?
I don't think that there's any organization that has this kind of muscle. Certainly Saddam Hussein would have the resources and perhaps the organization to do it, but based on what was released recently on the net, my guess would be Osama bin Laden, the same guy that more recently took out the USS Cole and killed 17 U.S. sailors.
We see President Bush will be making a statement about these attacks very shortly. The president, of course, was in Florida this morning, right. And then now he is in an undisclosed location.
We're told that he's to make a statement. Well, Colonel Hackworth, thank you. That's Colonel David Hackworth, military analyst, expert on these affairs, has been examining these affairs for a very, very long time. We appreciate you being with us on this very sad day, Colonel. The president is to make a statement at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana shortly. That's according to the White House. Earlier today, the president was the first to call this an apparent terrorist attack. Colonel David Hackworth is laying it right at the doorstep of alleged terrorist mastermind Osama bin Laden. However, we should always caution that no one has taken responsibility, claimed responsibility for this attack, and remind everyone once again that after the Oklahoma City bombing, many people blamed Arab terrorists for that attack when, in fact, of course, we all know now it was Tim McVeigh who masterminded that attack on the Oklahoma City Federal Building.
And now, almost 4 hours after the first plane crashed into the first tower of the World Trade Center, the smoke it's an unbelievable sight. A huge billow of smoke still coming from the area. The lower tip of southern Manhattan just virtually shrouded in dense smoke. Heavy ash and littered pieces of paper are covering the streets and the sidewalks. Cars, people are walking away. We're seeing one woman who's explaining what happened to her. She is covered in blood. The Pentagon, too, is still smoldering after an aircraft crashed into a helipad and part of the Pentagon.
It looks like a line of ambulances there outside the Pentagon waiting to recover the dead and injured. Now, we know...
Don Richards in the 970 WFLA News Center as we continue in-depth team coverage of the attack on America. Just to get you caught up with what we are doing, we are continuing in-depth team coverage of the incidents of this day. 970 WFLA's Ted Webb taking your calls at 620 WDAE, the sports animal. You can check with him if you would like to vent, and I imagine a lot of people perhaps on this day, would like to. Closings as we have them. Hillsborough Community College's campuses are closed today. USF has canceled classes. St. Pete Junior College is closed. No evening classes there. Brandon Citrus Park and Countryside malls have been closed. We are awaiting a statement from President Bush, who, according to some sources, is at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. He took off from Sarasota this morning. There have been some reports, unconfirmed, that he was at MacDill Air Force Base. Now at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. We await a statement from him. All St. Petersburg Greyhound bus stations confirming that all northbound buses are being halted in their tracks and turning around. The Greyhound bus stations throughout Florida closing by 1 o'clock, except for the St. Petersburg Greyhound bus terminal. It's closing at 3 because of a bus that is returning from the north. Major League Baseball, as you have heard, has canceled all games for today, wiping out the Rays and the Red Sox. The Janet Jackson concert, which was going to draw a lot of people down to the Ice Palace tonight, has been postponed until tomorrow night, same time, same ticket. We have been endeavoring to keep you up to date with what is going on. Katie Hughes is a spokesperson for the Tampa Police Department. The mayor's office, the FBI, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office have been meeting to discuss what's going on. And here's what she has to say about your attitude.
There is no reason at all for anybody to panic. At this point, people should be watching the news, just keeping close tabs, know where their family is, and just, take precautions. I mean, if they feel that they want to go to the grocery stores, have food in their house, just as a precaution, that's not a bad idea, but it is not a reason to panic.
Katie Hughes of the Tampa Police Department will be getting more later this afternoon from officialdom in Hillsborough County. They have a news briefing scheduled for this afternoon, and also have a briefing later this afternoon from the people at Tampa International Airport. As you know, all air operations in the United States have been closed, and the indications were earlier that they would be back in operation in about 7 or 8 hours. That seems to be not the case. Airlines are starting to put people up for the night in some cases, so it's going to be some time before the air system gets back to normal. So that's the situation. Public schools in Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee are open, but we're told a lot of parents are coming to pick up their students at those classes. We'll continue to keep you updated. Live, in-depth team coverage on News Radio 970 WFLA.
92.1 WDDV.
To make a speech, became very grim-faced, and shortly thereafter made the announcement to a stunned crowd in Florida that this attack had taken place, and called it an apparent terrorist attack, said whoever is responsible will not be allowed to get away with it, and he immediately headed to Air Force One to come back to Washington to oversee what is certainly a full-blown crisis.
And now we're seeing at a construction site in New York some sheets hung out reading God Bless America and pray for families and victims. Certainly a very emotional moment for anybody who's covering this, and for anybody, of course, who has gone through it. A huge pall of dark smoke is still hanging over the site of the bombings, the attacks, I should say, this morning at the World Trade Center. 2 planes crashed into the 2 towers of the World Trade Center, and a short time later, those towers collapsed. In other parts of the country, too, in Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, of course, is shut down, as airports are throughout the country under orders of the FAA. Security is tightened at Andrews Air Force Base. In North Carolina, military bases prepared for a possible change in status and increase in security. In South Dakota, commercial flights from Sioux Falls and Rapid City, other cities, have been grounded. In California, the state is on highest alert. The state emergency council has been convened, and Governor Gray Davis is requesting heightened security, of course, at all state buildings.
And this is having the events today are having a wide effect. The Walt Disney Company, which of course owns this network, and whose parks and cartoon characters are known around the world, Walt Disney has temporarily shut down its U.S. parks and has begun to assess global operations because of the attacks. A Disney spokeswoman said Walt Disney World in Florida, and Disneyland in Southern California had been closed. The water parks, the shopping areas, and affiliated sites near the parks have been shut down as well. Also shut down today, the stock exchange, no trading on Wall Street, as well as other centers around the world. Of course, as we said earlier today, many of the world's leading banking institutions had their U.S. headquarters in the World Trade Center in one of the two twin towers, both of which do not exist anymore.
The situation at the Pentagon, as we're following, also another plane crashed into a helipad in parts of the inner courtyard of the Pentagon. The lines and lines of ambulances are there. We're seeing people being helped to the grassy area outside the Pentagon. Some of them can walk. Some of them are being taken out to the ambulances and then onto the hospitals. Security, of course, extremely tight at the Pentagon. And again, just an incredible cloud, dark cloud over the lower end of Manhattan and across the parts of the Pentagon as well, drifting out and visible for miles.
We're still waiting.
Don Richards in the 970 WFLA News Center. We are joined by 970 WFLA's Jack Harris. Ted Webb taking calls at 620 WDAE, the sports animal, as we sort of react and let you know what's going on, what's not going on. On the day we went to war, we just really, Jack, don't know who the enemy is at this particular point.
That's true. The first time the U.S. mainland has ever been attacked by an enemy in a situation like this. We've had terrorist acts, individual acts, but a concerted attack like this one, this is a first. This day it is. And the interesting thing is the mood around here. It's not quite what it was like when JFK was assassinated, but there's a similar feeling that of uncertainty, I think, more than anything else. I don't think you have the incredible sorrow that right. Left a pall over the nation for days, but you've got the feeling of uncertainty, and that's something rare in this country.
Well, because thousands of people probably have died. We don't know the number yet. We don't know who's responsible. We're all sort of in suspended disbelief, I guess would be the phrase for it. 970 WFLA's Al Ryan is at MacDill Air Force Base, and he's joining us. Al, any change in the posture there?
No change in the posture, Don, except that the situation is extremely serious and grim here, and we have 4 or 5 Tampa police cars, police in body armor, joining the Air Force security personnel here at the main gate at MacDill, searching every single car that goes through the gate. These men are not fooling around. They've got automatic weapons. They're wearing their Kevlar helmets and their body armor, and we are under, at MacDill Air Force Base, a force protection condition Delta. Earlier it was threat con Delta, which means we are in a state of imminent war. There were some rumors earlier that the president's plane may have landed here. Those rumors apparently false. He is apparently over at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. So once again, a long traffic line here outside the main gate going up MacDill, and every car being searched, and obviously only people with jobs to do here on the base are being allowed on. Everybody else being turned away.
All right, 970 WFLA's Al Ryan at MacDill Air Force Base. We are joined now by a man who we have spoken to in the past on situations like this, Casey Poulin, who is with Critical Intervention Services. Basically, Casey, we're at war, but as we say, we don't know who the enemy is at this particular point.
Well, it's for sure that some of the early reports that the Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine is probably not the group. I know there's reports of that out there now. It would surprise me that group had the resources to be able to coordinate this level of attack on multiple targets at one time. Plus, politically, I think it just doesn't make sense for them to be able to go ahead and conduct these types of attacks. Bin Laden is probably the most responsible party to this. However, he operates in a decentralized fashion. So he finances and helps coordinate, but he doesn't have. He has other people commit the attacks.
But this has to have taken a tremendous amount of coordination, assuming, as we have to, and there's no indication that it wasn't, that this was a coordinated attack. Training, coordination, timing, money, expense.
No question. It's probably the most well-planned terrorist attack in the history of terrorism. The logistical requirements to be able to coordinate multiple cells, multiple terrorist cells, to attack multiple targets, all within a timed frame, where the first one, and then 18 minutes later, when the cameras were on, to have the second one, the second plane hit the second tower, and then the Pentagon, and so on. It took incredible timing and coordination, no question.
Casey, I think the agency that's going to come up with a serious black eye on this is any part of the intelligence community, given the magnitude of and the enormity of this thing, that nobody really had a hint, although there had been warnings that something may come down in the next month or two. The fact that they didn't know any better than that, and secondly, that 4 airplanes could be hijacked in one day when it's been so long since there's been a successful hijacking in the U.S.
Well, but that makes it even more brilliant, because our guard was down on hijacking since we implemented the new security procedures for to prevent against hijackings in the 70s. We haven't had any. Therefore, our guard has been down. I have to correct that we didn't know of the possibility of an attack. We had State Department briefings a week or more ago, advising on potential attacks.
But let me just say that we weren't clear on what would happen, specifically what the modus operandi would be, hijacking airplanes, crashing into the World Trade Center, that kind of thing, when apparently so many people were privy to the information.
And that's what makes it even harder, because we're looking at decentralized cells, as I was saying earlier. So each group that is responsible for one particular target is responsible for their own coordination. So one group may not know what another group is doing. So that makes it very hard to infiltrate those types of organizations, unless you infiltrate at the core of the planning group.
Well, I think back to World War II and the intelligence operations, even in the Vietnam War, that we had inside people who could forward this information when it became available, and yet apparently we don't do that any longer.
These cells, we're talking about cells that are maybe 5 to 6 or 7 people at the most. So we're looking at a very difficult scenario to be able to infiltrate with intelligence personnel. That's why the structure of that cell is so successful. The target selection is interesting as well. I mean, we're looking at why did they pick the Twin Towers? Well, obviously they wanted to let us know that they can still reach a target that has been hardened after one bombing already. The Twin Towers have, the World Trade Center has put in $50 million of additional security countermeasures after the first bombing incident. So it was an extremely hardened target. But yet again, they found a way to circumvent those measures.
And to take them both out in their entirety. That's the amazing part of this whole thing. And one thing we've talked about a little bit in here this morning is the fact that this is going to result in enormous changes in the future in the security plans of large buildings, of schools, of churches, anywhere there are large gatherings of people, not to mention airports for airport personnel themselves.
It's terrorism basically evolves. So as we implement more countermeasures, it changes. In the 70s, we went from hijackings, then we had suicide bombers. The terrorism will change to adapt to vulnerabilities. Obviously, this terrorism incident today has escalated to a new level of attack, which is this time they utilized suicide planes, hijacked planes into the buildings. I think that no matter what we do, eventually terrorism will find a way around it if the terrorists are willing to sacrifice their life in the attack.
And God knows what will happen with biological and chemical warfare. I mean, that's even going to be more difficult to deal with.
Absolutely. One of the things, first thing this morning that we started looking for, we have a biochemical database here with all the information. The first thing we did when those planes hit, we were waiting for symptoms to show up in the event that those were utilized. So it is a concern on all experts today to keep track of. But it looks like this time around they didn't go to that extreme. But eventually it is very possible that they will.
And one other thing, I think we're dealing with a mindset that's incomprehensible in this country. And to me, that was clearly demonstrated by a survey that was done in Palestine or in the Palestine enclaves, where the suicide bombers who had taken out the women and children as well as the men in the Israeli bombings were applauded by something like 82% of the people. They said they thought that these people were heroes who had gone in and taken out civilians. And we don't think like that in this country.
No, I mean, to them, casualties of war are acceptable. Killing children is preventing the children from growing up and becoming enemies.
Yeah.
They have a system, a mindset of being able to justify pretty much any act of terror as long as it suits the needs of their purpose.
Interesting. I just handed a note that bin Laden is condemning the act.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
And is that normal for him? Would he do that normally? If he were the perpetrator of this, the mastermind behind the entire thing, would he condemn it at this point, or would he take credit for it, or what? We know some Palestinian group has taken credit.
Be on the most wanted list, and if he has a hand in this, if he's remotely associated with this, the United States, without doubt, will go to all extremes to capture him. And I think that with this type of coordinated attack, he has become a worldwide menace if he was involved. And I don't think there's maybe politically it's feasible for him, it's expedient for him to deny it. But I'm not sure that he was not involved. I can assure you that the original group that claimed responsibility for this is probably a decoy claim. It's not.
No, you can usually expect 3 or 4 groups to jump up and down and say, "We did it."
Depends on the act. It really depends on what type of terrorist act is. But this particular group, the Front for Liberation of Palestine, has not really been active in these terms since the late 70s, early 80s.
And as you said, they don't have the resources to have done a coordinated attack like that which was accomplished today.
Operation cost large amounts of money and time in coordinating and planning. And from an expert's position here, and every expert that we've talked to, it looks like they were able to succeed in their mission.
One other interesting thing, KC, and I brought this in and was going to use it on the air one morning on AM Tampa Bay and never got around to it. Just didn't have room for it because it seemed almost meaningless at the time. But it was a story about a week and a half ago that the U.S. intelligence community distributed, I think it was hundreds of thousands of matchbook covers with a picture of Osama bin Laden and a $500,000 reward for information leading to his capture.
Sure.
And they had tried this once before with some other known terrorist, and they were able to get enough information to arrest this man. Mm-hmm. And they felt that it might work against Osama bin Laden.
I think you'll see probably a lot more increases in those types of attempts. But bin Laden, if we remember the New Year's Eve 2000 issue when we had terrorists come across our border, bin Laden and the embassies that he coordinated and so on and so forth, he is a worldwide menace. He has the capabilities to reach anywhere in the world, and if he was involved in this, obviously it has proved the fact that he can reach into the United States as well.
All right, Casey, we certainly appreciate you joining us on 970 WFLA.
Thank you.
And we will stay in touch with you because of your expertise in the field of security and counterterrorism.
Anytime, gentlemen.
Okay, that is Casey Poland of Critical Intervention Services, a man on whose expertise we draw from time to time when situations like this, not that there has been a situation like this, comes up. Just to let you know what is going on, roads in and out of MacDill Air Force Base closed. Brandon Town Center, Citrus Park, and Countryside malls are closed. USF, St. Pete JC, and Hillsborough Community Colleges have all shut down for this day. In fact, the state's entire university system, Florida State, Florida, all the rest, shut down today. They're letting local officials make decisions regarding other schools. They've lifted tolls on the Turnpike, Alligator Alley. Theme parks like Disney have shut down. A lot of people are trying to get home and can't because of no flights. Mm-hmm. So they're using rental cars or their own vehicles. The Florida Capitol Education Building, local government offices in the Miami area, state office building in Orlando closed. The governor meeting with state emergency officials to get some indication as to what's going on. No indication from FDLE Chief Tim Moore that there's anything subject to any specific threat in the wake of the bombings in New York and Washington and apparently Pennsylvania. No specific threat to Florida in all of this. Northbound Greyhound buses are being halted in their tracks and turning around. Greyhound bus stations throughout Florida closing at this hour, except the St. Petersburg Greyhound bus terminal closing at 3. A bus coming back from the the north. The Janet Jackson concert at the Ice Palace tonight, postponed, same ticket, tomorrow night, same time. We are waiting for an appearance by President Bush, who is supposed to have a few things to say about all of this. There had been some unconfirmed reports that he was at MacDill Air Force Base, and indeed he may have been for a brief period of time. Word now is that he is at an Air Force base, Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.